welcome my partners in crime. Welcome back to Murder Analysed. I'm Christina Moore. Now, before we even start on anything else, I must tell you that there is a serious warning that goes out with this. You can see it in the intro, because I change my intros when the cases are so much more serious than they are in just general cases. This is a case that could trigger something in you. So I just want you to know before you start, we are talking about the rape, the torture, the murder of a 5-year-old girl in Alabama in America. And this poor young girl was sold to this rapist, child abuser, killer, for the sum of $2,500. That's what the mother sold her for. It's so shocking, this case. But before we started on anything, I wanted to get that out there. This is what we're going to talk about in this case. And it is disturbing, to say the least. I do many, many cases when it comes to these sort of crimes. And even this one has shocked me. So there's plenty more for you to watch on Murder Analysed if this case is not for you. This child was 5-year-old and her name was Kamarie Holland, right? Or Princess, really. Because that's what she wanted to be. That was her ambition, was to grow up to be a princess. That was her dream. This child, beautiful child, you know, loving, happy, had lived through her life. Yes, her parents were divorced and the father had custody of her. And at the time of this murder, and when this mother, her actual mother, sold her for that amount of money to this man, she was just visiting her mother. So it was premeditated, it was planned, because she wasn't there all the time. But this child, when you see this child, when you read about this child, this kindergarten child, this 5-year-old, who all she ever wanted to be was a princess, her death was terrible, right? It was terrible. Now, she was born on November 23rd, 2016, and her life was taken on December the 13th, 2021. Her mother was this Kristy Siple. She used to put Facebook things on and all this sort of stuff, and you know, when she had these kids, because little princess had a lot more family and siblings, but she would, I know you'll find this for a lot of these people that are abusers or you know, use these children for money. She would put things on in Facebook and all these different sites, Instagram, of the happy family that they were, and you'll see some of these pictures of her really pretending, because when you think about what sort of woman like this, right, who this was her only child, her only daughter, sorry, she had other sons, this was her only daughter, that could make money out of their daughter, there cannot be any care or love there, right? There just can't, no matter what this woman tries to portray. And then to sell her to this man, knowing that she probably didn't know she was going to be murdered, but she knew that he was going to abuse this girl terribly and then give her back. That was what the plan was. So she could make a quick $2,500. I mean, how can you live with yourself after doing that anyway? But you see, when you put these children in the hands of a man like this, really, I'm going to talk about him in a minute, what did she expect the outcome would be? This child's life would have been damaged for the rest of her life anyway. This girl just had a terrible death at the hands of this man, and this woman had literally handed her over to him. It is so shocking, this case. It's unbelievable, isn't it? When you think about and you see the pictures of this girl and you look at the mother, it's unimaginable to me, and I know it would be to you. So the perpetrator in this case, and there is probably, of course there's two perpetrators. There's the mother, who's an absolute piece of shit, right? But then you've got this man, this Jeremy Williams, right? He was 37, I think, or 38 at the time of this murder. And when he was sentenced, I think he was 39. So he's only just been sentenced actually in April this year, like 2024. But when you think of, when you see this man, he's a big man, he had a history, right? And we'll go through his history of abuse and probably of other murders, which are there, now they're really looking into them. But this man was walking around free. This man was a friend of the mother's. She said we were just friends, she didn't know his background. Well, obviously, she knew his background. That's a bloody lie. Because what person on earth will come up to a mother and say, can I buy your child for one night? I think it was for 1 hour, right? He paid for 1 hour to do things to your child, but I'll bring her back and I'll give you $2,500 for the pleasure. What mother would do that? When would that conversation actually come up? You know, in a general conversation, unless she had known what this man was anyway, right? She knew him. She knew of him. Of course she did. Because that's not a normal conversation to have, is it? Really, when we think about it, that you're just going to sell your child to some random man that you just know, but he's a nice man, you thought he was all right, but he's offered you $2,500 for 1 hour to do what he wants to your child. It just doesn't add up. So this woman's a bloody liar and lied right from day one. So her mother, or I hate to call her mother, but the person that she was staying with, had rights. Their father had parental control and she had the rights to have this child permanently, but she did have rights of visitation with his children. And this young little girl, this poor young girl, went to visit her, and she lived in Columbus, Georgia, and so it was right on that border of Georgia and Alabama, right? That's where it was. So he took her about 80 miles away from there over to Alabama, into this derelict house that was his, and he murdered her in December on that night, after torturing her and everything, in this basement of this property. And you'll see a picture of this property. So that's why there's sort of the line, because of the line it's so close to that border, different states and stuff. But he's took her, she's allowed him to take her, he's took her 80 miles away from where she was living. This girl, you know, how a 5-year-old probably thought she was, you know, I don't know what they told this girl. No one really knows because this woman's such a liar. But she went with this man, whether she went willingly or not, she had to. She was 5. So he's drove her to this property. And I think what happened is that her body was then found about 11:30 that night. Her cause of death was asphyxiation with a garrote. He had strangled her, really. But after, he had tortured her and sexually assaulted her. He had also filmed himself after she was deceased, this poor young girl, as he was abusing her again. We find that with a lot of these criminals, that they do that. They film themselves after the death, and that's what he did. And this is what the police then found. So when we go back now to the mother, what she said is that she rang, right? Because don't forget, he was only meant to take this girl for an hour, you know, bring her back in whatever state, and how she was going to cover this up with the ex-husband who actually had rights over this child. How they actually thought they could cover this up, I don't know. But she actually did believe that, you know, he'd only be an hour. Abuse a child, bring her back. Well, he never came back. So about 10 past 5 a.m. in the morning, she rang, you know, the emergency services and said that she had woken up and her child had disappeared from her bed. The front door was open, so someone had abducted her from this home where she was meant to be staying, because she couldn't get hold of this man, right? So for about a week after this murder, and they did find this girl that night, so they knew right now that she was dead. And this woman was told, because no one in their right mind would do what this woman did. So the police believed that she was a secondary victim, right? She had had a child that had been abducted from her property, her home. The child was taken out of bed and gone. So for about a week, that's what everyone believed. Everyone believed that. But the thing is, when this man murdered her in this property, one, it was his property, right? So it's linked to him. He also had a record of other things that would go through. So really, they knew it was him. And then all of a sudden, the links started to come together that she actually knew this man, right? So these are not intelligent criminals. These are just perverted criminals. Greed, lust. That's what this crime was about, right? Sexual gratification. And hers was greed, money, to sell her own child. So when you think about, the next day, after she found out that her daughter was murdered, she was probably shocked, but not shocked in the way where she would think, oh my God, you know, where some of us who don't know what's happened to our children would be frantic, right? You want to know how they've died, you know, did they suffer? This girl sort of didn't want to know any of that, right? She packed up a load of toys of this little girl, of her own daughter, and took them to a toy drive and walked in and said, you know, my daughter's been murdered, and this is the next day, and I'm going to give these, you know, in memory of her. She would want someone to have these. She would want to be remembered in this way. You see, now this woman is playing the victim, right? She wants attention. Probably thinks she's going to make more money out of that. But it was very, very strange behaviour. You've just lost your child in the most violent way possible. You're saying this child has been took from your home. You should be frantic. Even when they found the body, you've been told that your child has died in such a way, right? You would be not able probably to sleep, to get out of bed, if you know, or walk or breathe properly when you have been through this sort of trauma. But not this girl. I'll show you a picture of her. The next day she's got the toys behind her because this girl wants attention, right? She wants attention because she thinks that press her on it, there's money to be made here, because this is what this girl was all about. She was a 35-year-old, right? And she's either known by this Kristy Siple or this Kristy Hopkins, right? Either one you can find her on if you want to look her up. So she agreed with all this. So when, you know, if you're not acting the way you should be acting, when your child is murdered or something's happened to your child, the police look at this and think, well, why not? How could you remove all this stuff of this child from your home and take it to a toy drive for other children, but then to be bragging about your child was the one that was murdered in this way? It's such a strange, she's so strange, right? You see her, she's just so strange. But this just works out of her personality, I think, because she really didn't give a shit about this child. Not at all. She probably didn't give a shit about anyone in her whole life because she couldn't have, because of what she did to this poor girl. Now, in her own words, right, what she said on that day and other days, because people started to question, right, these few days leading up actually to her arrest and where they made the connection between her and this man, this Williams, is just shocking, right? But she said, I'm a mummy. This is what she was telling people. I am a mummy. I didn't have anything to do with this at all. This is her words. She was my life. She was my love of my life. I lived for her daily. She lived for her. She was my only daughter. That's all she kept saying as she was smiling and having her photos done about this child. When people were questioning, a lot of people now were questioning, something just doesn't add up. But she was still trying to portray this caring, loving mother, my only daughter, my life, my love. Really? And you sold her for $2,500. So this night, when the same night when her body was found in December 2021, this young girl, her body was found actually in Montgomery, and this was near the Georgia and Alabama border, as I've said, on the state line. So it brings a lot of stuff into this because she was removed from one state and sort of killed in another by this man. But as I said, he owned this property And so the links to him were overwhelming, to tell you the truth. And then it was straightforward, really, with the link between him and her. And then I think he was the one that admitted everything when he was picked up and questioned. He didn't deny it. But he also said about the involvement of the mother of this child. He actually said it, right? I think this man had such, and we'll go over his background now so you can understand about this man. He is a killer, right? He is a child abuser, child molester, child rapist, and a murderer, right? This is not the only child that he has murdered. It's not. And now, as I said before, the police are now looking into him in a different sort of light and bringing up and old cases that they probably didn't have enough evidence for at the time. A lot of them got through, and we'll go over his sort of thing now. But this man did have a background, right? He did. He was known for this sort of thing. So this Jeremy Williams' past crimes. He was charged with sexual abuse in Phenix City in 2009, but he was acquitted by jury in 2012. He was charged with abuse of a child in Columbus, but I think how the disposition of this case came along was that the case wasn't immediately known to these detectives as from one state to another. Not everything is put out there, right? So that sort of probably didn't come up until he was then arrested and people searched more about him for that. But additionally, authorities had information that Williams was a suspect in the death of a 1-year-old in Alaska, but he was never charged. And that was due to lack of evidence in that case. Authorities in Alaska, though, have also now reported that there was a case in 2005 because his own daughter died at 1 month old from blunt force trauma. Now, that case is now being reopened. So we have all these other cases, and they're the ones that they sort of know about. So this man did have a history of violence against children. He was also known, though, around the place to have a liking to very young children. So when he was caught, and it was very quick, as I said, within a week, he was charged with, and he pled guilty actually straight away to one count of, or guilty of one count of each of sodomy, sexual abuse with child less than the age of 12, produced because he filmed what he was doing to her after death and during, materials involving a child, human trafficking because he took the child over the state lines, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, so he agreed and they made an agreement between him and the mother to take the child, and he was also charged with abuse of a corpse, which again the police found on his phone once he was arrested. Now, he was, because he admitted everything, right, he didn't really, there was no court case I suppose necessary, but you see in the state of Alabama you have the death penalty, right? So for a judge to impose that penalty on you, you have to go to court and you have to go through the process of that so that the sentencing is then correct, right, for the crimes and punishment that you've done. I think this is why, you know, they are going for the death penalty, right? They are. But the minute Jeremy, and this was, I think, 24th of April, he was in court this year. So he was 39, he was handed 4 death sentences in April 2024 for the abduction, rape, murder of 5-year-old Kamari, and he paid the child's mother to rape and sodomize her in December 2021. So that's what he was charged with, that's what he's sentencing with. He will go back for full sentencing, and he will probably stay on death row for probably many years, because you may give someone a death sentence doesn't mean that's going to happen tomorrow, right? These take years. This man, I don't think this man's going to appeal at all. He's admitted everything, actually, to tell the truth, give him that. But I think the evidence here was overwhelming for this man. But he also did take this mother, this woman, this Kristy, down with him. And so he should. She is due to go to court to be sentenced, and it looks like she could probably get about 20 years in prison for her part. I don't believe that's enough for this sort of murder of a child. I really don't. You've sold your child, you've trafficked your child, you knew, no matter what she says about this man, as I've said before, when you have a conversation with someone, where you are selling your child, no ordinary man or woman would have any part of that. They would like, what are you talking about? So she must have had some understanding of how depraved this man was to do that. So, and because she didn't have this child in her custody all the time, this child would just visit her, this was premeditated, this was planned, right? They had planned this to happen on the weekend that she had this child. So whether she thinks her defence is that she only wanted him to sexually abuse the child, or in her words, just to do oral sex on this man for 1 hour, does that give it, is that an excuse for her? No. Is 20 years enough? That's what I'm going to ask you. Leave it in the comments. Is for her, I mean, he's going to end up the rest of his life in prison, and to tell the truth, the crimes that he's done, he probably wouldn't last long in prison anyway. On death row, he probably won't, right? Probably on death row, he's more protected, to tell you the truth, than he is in the main population of that prison. So sooner or later, I'll probably be gone before this man actually gets his death penalty. Really, that's how long we have to keep them. But her, 20 years, it's not enough, is it? It's not enough. This 35-year-old mother, this Kristy Siple, or Hopkins, however she wants to be called. So her charges are because she agreed with others to allow to take her child for money. So you've sold a child for money, right? That's one of them. And she sold that child to him for the known reasons of having sexual intercourse with him, right? That's what she knew about. And to sodomize this 5-year-old child. That's what part of it was, her charges against her. She said that she pleaded guilty to 1 count of human sex trafficking, and she faces up to 20 years. So when we see what she's, we know he paid this money. There's a lot more than human trafficking here, right? There's a lot more. And I think even if it was human trafficking, if that's all we can do it for, 20 years has got to be not enough, right? There must be more harsh sentences for people that do these sort of crimes. We can't do any more to this Jeremy Williams than what we've done, right? We can't. But to show an example to this, for this woman, to stop people using their children to make money or to sell them or to traffic them, and there are people that do it. There are. It's just shocking to me that this woman only get 20 years. So I'm going to watch. She hasn't been... hers isn't ready yet in court, so once it is, I'll give you some updates on her. But this, to me, this case, and I haven't gone into all details in this case, right, what this man done to this child, right, is shocking. It's disgusting. It's depraved. It is probably one of the most devastating, I don't know how to say it. It's one of the most awful cases that I think I've ever read. Now, I think Kamarie Holland is this girl's father. And as he says, nothing's going to bring this girl back, no matter what they do. And her siblings say she was lovely, she's happy. She was 5, right? She was a kindergarten little kid that all her whole dream was to be a princess. She still believed in that. She still had that innocence to her. And then your mother sells you to a man like this. And whether you'd survived it, if she'd survived it, that little girl would never have been the same again, would she? And so for that, this woman needs to be serving longer than 20 years. Just for that. You took someone's innocence away. You took a child away from a loving family that loved her, that Her whole siblings loved her. Her other family members loved her. Her father loved her. He was taking care of her. He had custody of her. You was allowed just one weekend with this girl, and that's what you planned to do, and you got her. Oh God, I don't know. You know, sometimes, as I said, I do these cases. How bad can they get? Not much worse than this, surely. Not much worse than this. So my heart goes out to this family. It does. Because her loss, this tragedy, this loss of this child has affected so many people in the community. People cannot believe it. And people have had enough. So this is one reason why we do these cases. Is to highlight what is going on, right, out in the world. And I know they're terrible cases. And I know many of you don't want to hear them. But if we don't talk about these cases, if we don't give this girl her voice to say, listen, this is what happened to me, then what are we here for, really? This girl, this young 5-year-old, is, I think, forever in my heart. Absolutely. Because I understand, when you read in detail this case, exactly what this girl had gone through. This innocent child that probably couldn't believe or understand why her mother had sold her like that. I bet she couldn't believe it. It's just shocking. Her community though, her father's community has come together, the church has come together. They've really done a lot for this family, the community, to support this community. After hearing this case, you'll understand that a lot of people would have been affected by this. And their memories for these people will never ever go. They will never ever go, because they've had to live through this. And yes, has justice been served? I believe justice has been served when it comes to the perpetrator, the male perpetrator, this Jeremy Williams. Yes, I do. It will, you know, finalise once they've actually put this man to death. For her though, for the mother, no, I don't think justice has been done, but then it isn't finished yet, so we just have to wait and see. But I think if all she's going to get is 20 years, no, that's not enough. It's not enough. Not for someone like her. Not for someone that could do that to their own child. For $2,500. I mean, was it all worth it? Was it all worth it? Anyway, this has been this beautiful little Kamarie, Princess Holland's case. And that's how we should remember her, as a princess, living her life now with people that love her, looking down and looking after the people that she cares for. That's what we should be thinking about when we look at this little girl. Because now probably in heaven, she probably is a princess. And she deserves to be, doesn't she? Doesn't she really? She deserves it. So listen, thanks for watching. Till the next time. Bye-bye.